नमस्कार दोस्तों, मैं हूं सचिन और आपका मेरे यूट्यूब चैनल पे बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। दोस्तों, आज हम इंग्लिश लिटरेचर की एक और एज डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं, जिस एज का नाम है द विक्टोरियन एज, और जिस एज की शुरुआत होती है 1837 में और इसकी जो एंडिंग है वो होती है 1901 में। तो चलिए दोस्तों, इस एज के कुछ हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट्स जान लेते हैं। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, इस एज को जाना जाता है रिलीजन कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ के लिए, जिसे कि हम साइंस वर्सेस रिलीजन भी कहते हैं। सेकंड थिंग, इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। देखिए, इस टाइम पे जो था जो विक्टोरियन एज में ग्रेट इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन हुई थी, जिस वजह से कि बहुत ज़्यादा अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट हुई थी, क्योंकि लोग जो थे वो इंडिया से स्लेव खरीद रहे थे, अफ्रीका से स्लेव खरीद रहे थे। ठीक है, तो जो नॉर्मल लोग थे इंग्लैंड के, उनको उतना काम नहीं मिल रहा था, क्योंकि फ्री में अगर काम करने वाले बंदे मिल रहे हैं तो फिर लेबर क्लास जो थी वो बेली हो गई थी, उनके पास कोई काम ही नहीं बचा था। ठीक है, तो हाई इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन पीरियड दिस वाज, एंड देन इट वाज द पीरियड ऑफ कॉलोनाइजेशन ऑल्सो। ठीक है, द कंडीशन ऑफ सोसाइटी बिकेम वर्स्ट, इवन द मैरिड और प्रेग्नेंट वुमेन ऑफ 8 months वर सपोज टू वर्क फॉर 8 hours। Look, this was the time when England controlled more than 50 countries, 700 plus islands. So England became very rich. ठीक है, and then the rise of science. Charles Darwin's Origins of Species in 1859, which gave the formula of survival of the fittest. It came during this age, and then a lot of letters wrote crime fiction novels because they perceived the criminals or their crime under the light of survival of the fittest. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से द राइज ऑफ साइंस वाज आल्सो देयर, एंड देन द सिल्वर फोक नॉवल और फैशनेबल नॉवेल्स. लुक, द विक्टोरियंस, दे वर equally very rich and equally very poor. So Benjamin Disraeli started a group called the Silver Folk Novel or Fashionable Novel. So they were writing for the rich class. Benjamin Disraeli in his work Sibyl talked about two nations. He said that England is having two nations inside one, which is very rich and the other one is very poor. And then the age of wars. During this, England had various wars like the Crimean War, issues with Ireland which resulted in the Union of Crown 1800, and England also was facing a lot of revolutions from various colonies, for example 1857 in India. And then the Victorians, they were divided in two parts. One is the optimistic people and the other one is the pessimistic people. So to bring back the faith of young people in religion, Victorian thinkers came with Oxford movement, which was also known as the Tractarian movement. Okay, and then this age was also the age of the time of Italian Renaissance, which inspired Victorians, and it also inspired Robert Browning, Alfred Lord Tennyson, Thomas Arnold, and Lady Browning. And then the most happening group of Victorians, the pre-Raphaelites, it came during this age only. Okay, then because of the change in social conditions, a lot of acts were passed, like Reform Act 1832, Charter Act 1837, industrialization, colonial attempts of England for the sake of sources, materials, labor class. So from 1837 to 1901 is the most fruitful years of English history. So these are some of the most important historical facts about Victorian age. Now let us start discussing the Victorian poets, and then we'll start with Alfred Lord Tennyson, who was born in 1809 and died in 1892. He was the fine blending of optimism and pessimism. Like Wordsworth, Tennyson was naturally shy, retiring, indifferent to men, hating noise and publicity, and loving to be alone with nature. Wordsworth wrote him a letter saying that he had been trying all his life to write such an English pastoral as Dora and had failed. The year 1850 was a happy one for Tennyson. He was appointed poet laureate to succeed Wordsworth, and he married Emily Selwood. Carlyle describes him as a fine, large-featured, dim-eyed, bronze-colored, shaggy-headed man, most restful, brotherly, solid-hearted. Now let us discuss Tennyson's works. First of all, he has written Timbuktu, published 1829. He wrote it in the school and won the Chancellor's Medal. And then he has written Lotus Eaters. You go through the summary and read the poem also if possible. And third, he has written Ulysses, 1842. You can read this poem also, or at least the detailed summary of this poem. This poem is in the form of a dramatic monologue. Fourth one, he has written The Charge of the Light Brigade, published 1854. It inspired Rudyard Kipling to write the sequel of the poem The Last of Light Brigade. It deals with the Crimean War, particularly the Battle of Balaclava. Fifth, he has written In Memoriam, published 1850. It was written about the death of Arthur Henry Hallam. He took 17 years to complete this work. He calls him, Arthur, the innocent, gentle shepherd. He also compares him to the most beautiful god Venus. To talk about the loss, he has written some stanzas primarily known as Ideal Tears and Break, Break, Break. Here he is standing on the shore of the ocean, looking at the roaring waves thrusting themselves on the roofs. It seems that the ocean is also unhappy about Arthur's sudden death. The poet thinks that his emotions and anger are assimilating to the anger of the ocean, which is called the best example of objective correlative. Washington Allston coined the term, and T.S. Eliot propounded it in his famous essay Hamlet and His Problems. The immortality of human love is the theme of the poem. Sixth one, he has written The Princess, a Medley, published 1847. The poet pays a son's loyal tribute near the poem's ending to his mother Elizabeth Fitch, a gentle, lovable woman, not learned save in gracious household ways. It is a long poem over 3,000 lines of blank verse, is Tennyson's answer to the question of women's rights and women's sphere, which was then, as in our day, strongly educating the public mind. In this poem, a baby finally solves the problem philosophers have pondered ever since men began to think connectedly about human society. Next, he has written Locksley Hall, published 1842. It deals with the story of a rejected lover, William Jones. Eighth one, he has written Lady of the Chariot. Read the summary as well as the poem. It is a very, very important poem, and it is a satire on Victorian morality and ideology. Next, he has written Idleys of the King. Its general subject is the Celtic legends of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, and the chief source of its material is Mary's Mordred author. 10th, he has written Maud, published 1855. It is a monodrama telling the story of a lover who passes from morbidness to ecstasy, then to anger and murder, followed by insanity and recovery. This was Tennyson's favorite, and he read aloud from it among his friends more than from any other poem. 11th, he has written Enoch Garden, published 1864, and he has written some dramas also, that is Queen Mary, Falcon, The Cup, Harold, Beckett. So this was all about Tennyson. Now we will discuss the second important poet of this age, that is Robert Browning, born 1812, died 1889. The Italian Renaissance inspired him. In 1846, he suddenly became famous because he eloped with the best known literary woman in England, that is एलिज़ाबेथ बैरेट. देखिए एलिज़ाबेथ बैरेट जो थी दोस्तों उस टाइम बहुत फेमस थी, इवन टेनिसन से ज़्यादा इसको माना जाता था उस टाइम पे. और एक टाइम पे तो ये भी बात चल रही थी कि इसी को पोइट लॉरेट बना दिया जाए वर्ड्सवर्थ के बाद, लेकिन बाद में टेनिसन को बना दिया गया था कुछ कारणों के करके, क्योंकि ओब्वियसली लेडीज़ को उतनी ज़्यादा प्रेफरेंस नहीं दी जाती थी उस टाइम पे भी. ठीक है, तो इसीलिए टेनिसन जब थोड़ा हिट हुआ तो फिर टेनिसन को ही बना दिया गया था. हालांकि एलिज़ाबेथ बैरेट जो थी वो टेनिसन से ज़्यादा हिट थी एक टाइम पे. और हुआ क्या था, एक दिन ब्राउनिंग इसके घर जाता है किसी काम से, ऐसे ही घूमते फिरते हुए, और जब ये इसको दरवाजे पे देखता है तो इसको देखते उससे प्यार हो जाता है. दोनों को एक्चुअली एक दूसरे से प्यार हो जाता है. और फिर ये क्या करते हैं, ये वहाँ से भाग जाते हैं, क्योंकि एलिज़ाबेथ का जो बाप था वो थोड़ा खड़ूस टाइप था, बहुत ही ज़्यादा खड़ूस था, वो उनकी शादी कभी नहीं होने देता, इसलिए ये दोनों भाग के चले जाते हैं इटली. ठीक है, और इसके साथ जो थे वहीं पे ये काफ़ी टाइम तक रहते हैं साथ में. एंड देन इसी वजह से इटालियन जो रेनेसां था उससे जो रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग जो थी बहुत ज़्यादा इंस्पिरेशन मिली थी. तो ये कुछ थी रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग की थोड़ी बहुत लाइफ जो कि ज़रूरी थी आपके लिए जानना. ठीक है, अब इसके वर्क्स के बारे में जान लेते हैं. तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ही हैज़ रिटन माई लास्ट डशेस, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पोएम है, इसको ज़रूर पढ़िएगा, डिटेल्ड में पढ़िएगा और डिटेल्ड समरी भी पढ़िएगा. एंड देन ही हैज़ रिटन पॉलिन, पब्लिश्ड 1833. इट इज़ ए ट्रिब्यूट टू शैली एंड हिज पोइट्री. नेक्स्ट ही हैज़ रिटन द लास्ट राइट टुगेदर, बहुत सुंदर पोइम है, बहुत प्यारी पोइम है, इसे ज़रूर पढ़िएगा आप. And then he has written Porphyria's Lover, summary is enough, you can read the summary of this poem. And then he has written The Pied Piper of Hamelin, only title is enough, although you can read a short summary of also. And then he has written Andrea del Sarto or Cole the Faultless Painter. It deals with the life of a painter, Andrea del Sarto. इसकी भी summary जरूर पढ़ लीजिएगा, बहुत अच्छी poem है ये. ठीक है. And then ही हैज़ रिटन पीपा पासेस। अगर मैं एंड्रे डेल सार्टो की बात करूँ तो इसमें क्या होता है कि एक पेंटर होता है एंड्रे डेल सार्टो, उसको एक महबूबा से प्यार हो जाता है और फिर वो दोनों क्या करते हैं, कुछ जैसे एक राजा था वो उसको पेंटिंग बनाने के लिए देता है, बहुत सारे पैसे देता है उसको पेंटिंग बनाने के लिए, लेकिन उसकी जो लवर है वो बोलती है तुम पेंटिंग छोड़ो, हम ये पैसा लेके भाग चलते हैं, हमें कौन सा कोई पकड़ने वाला है। फिर वो अपनी महबूबा की बातों में आ जाता है एंड देन वो भाग जाते हैं एंड देन वहाँ पे जाके महबूबा जो है अपने किसी और आशिक को बुला लेती है और वो सारा पैसा लेके भाग जाते हैं और पेंटर को जो है वो राजा पकड़ लेता है एंड बाद में उसको मार दिया जाता है। ठीक है, तो ये कहीं ना कहीं जो औरतें कैसे इंसानों को धोखा देती हैं उसके रिगार्डिंग पोइम है, बहुत अच्छी पोइम है, इसे ज़रूर पढ़िएगा आप। ठीक है, एंड देन सेवन पे ही हैज़ रिटन पीपा पासेस, समरी जरूर पढ़िएगा इसकी, इट इज़ इंपॉर्टेंट पोइम। ठीक है, इट इज़ अ पोइटिक ड्रामा इन 4 एक्ट्स। अ गर्ल कोल्ड पिपा चेंजेस द लाइव्स ऑफ 4 people by singing God is in his heaven and all is right with the world. This work represents Victorian optimism and positivity. Auguste Comte is called the father of positivism. And then he has written prose piece. 9th one, he has written a grammarian's funeral. ज़रूर इसे पढ़िएगा, इसकी समरी तो ज़रूर पढ़िएगा। ठीक है, इसमें क्या होता है कि एक ग्रामेरियन होता है, एक प्रोफेसर होता है ग्रामर का, तो वो बहुत ही अच्छा प्रोफेसर होता है। फिर उसके जो स्टूडेंट्स, जब वो मर जाता है फिर उसके स्टूडेंट्स क्या करते हैं, उसको बहुत बड़ी हाइट पे जाके दफनाना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि वो मानते हैं कि ये बहुत बड़ा प्रोफेसर था और इसकी जो कब्र है वो एक बड़ी हाइट पे होनी चाहिए, इसको जो है ना, मतलब इसको एक तरह से ट्रिब्यूट देने के लिए। ठीक है, तो ये बहुत अच्छी पोइम है, इसको भी ज़रूर पढ़िएगा आप। एंड देन ही हैज़ रिटन द लोस्ट लीडर हेयर ब्राउनिंग क्रिटिसाइजेस वर्ड्सवर्थ। देखिए, जब वर्ड्सवर्थ ने एक्सेप्ट कर लिया था जो पोइट लॉरेटशिप थी, तो फिर ब्राउनिंग को ये चीज़ पसंद नहीं आई थी, क्योंकि ब्राउनिंग जो वर्ड्सवर्थ था वो लो लोगों के लिए लिखता था, लो लेवल के लोगों के लिए, लेकिन जब उसने ये चीज़ पहन ली, जब पोइट लॉरेटशिप ले ली, तो फिर ब्राउनिंग इससे बहुत ज़्यादा नाराज़ थे। ठीक है, तो इसलिए उन्होंने लिखी थी द लोस्ट लीडर। एंड देन ही हैज़ रिटन द रिंग एंड द बुक, written during 1868 to 1869. It is a long narrative poem or a verse novel of 21,000 lines published in 4 volumes. And then he has written Rabbi Ben Ezra, only summary is enough. And then finally he has written Fra Lippo Lippi. You can read this poem as well as the summary of this poem. So this is all about Robert Browning. Now we will discuss Elizabeth Barrett Browning, his wife. Browning's wife, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, born 1806 and died 1861. Just like Esther Coleridge, Lady Browning too had an opium addiction, and she locked herself in a room for 6 years after the death of one of her brothers. She has written Lady Geraldine's Courtship, and then she has written Kasagudi Windows, published 1851, and her most important poem is The Cry of the Children, 1842. ये पोइम आपको ज़रूर पढ़नी पड़ेगी। मेरे चैनल पे भी इसके ऊपर एक डिटेल्ड वीडियो है 30 मिनट्स की, तो वो भी आप देख सकते हैं। इट डील्स विद चाइल्ड लेबर। हेयर वी हैव अ सिंबल ऑफ ए यंग लैम्प हु इज़ क्राइंग। दिस यंग लैम्प हैज़ बीन कंपेयर्ड टू एन इनोसेंट चाइल्ड। Fourth one, he has written Aurora Lay, published 1856. This epic poem or a novel in verse was written in blank verse. It has 9 books. Fifth one, he has written Sonnets from the Portuguese, published 1850. The 2 most important sonnets out of this sonnets are How Do I Love Thee, Sonnet 43, and then Sonnet 33. Although all the sonnets are very beautifully written over here, so you can read this book if you wish to. It is a very small book and it is very engaging also, very personal also. So you will find a lot of personal details in this particular collection. ठीक है, तो इसे टाइम लगे तो ज़रूर पढ़ लीजिएगा। हालांकि बहुत महंगी है ये, लेकिन टाइम लगे तो ज़रूर पढ़ लीजिएगा। एंड देन वी विल कम टू मैथ्यू अर्नोल्ड, हु वाज बोर्न इन 1822 एंड डाइड इन 1888. हिज फादर वाज डॉक्टर थॉमस अर्नोल्ड, हेडमास्टर ऑफ रग्बी स्कूल. लिटन स्टार्चे wrote a work, Eminent Victorian, and mentioned Thomas Arnold. After 15 years of his father's death, he wrote an elegy on the death of his father, Rugby Chapel. So when questioned by people that why are you taking so much time, or why after 15 years of your father's death you are writing, an elegy on your father's death, so he replied to his mother when people started questioning why he took so long to commemorate his father. He said, I wanted my father to be celebrated with the greatest writer of the age. Now I have achieved that level and that's why I am writing it now. ठीक है. And then he was the intellectual son of John Cable, who started the Oxford movement. John Cable is also known as the godfather of Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold also became a professor of poetry at Oxford. He hated Victorian development, science and advancement. He has written Shakespeare, and then he has written Dover Beach, the most important poem written by him, published 1867. You just read the summary as well as the whole poem. मैंने भी इस पर एक वीडियो बनाया है, तो वो भी देख सकते हैं आप मेरे चैनल पे जाके. And then he has written Empedocles on Etna and other poems. And then he has written Thyrsis. It is an elegy written on the death of his friend Arthur Hugh Clough. And then he has written Memorial Verses. It is an elegy of praise and lament to Wordsworth. After that, he has written Balder Dead, published 1855. It deals with Norse mythology. And then he has written The Scholar Gypsy, A Southern Night, Obermann, stanzas from Grand Chartreuse. Gistus Grapes is a tribute to a little dog. And finally, he has written Sohrab and Rustam, published 1853. It is written in blank verse based on Firdausi's Persian epic Shahnama, Book of Kings, relating how the great warrior Rustam unknowingly slew his long-lost son Sohrab in single combat. We have a beautiful line here: "Truth sits upon the lips of dying men." And then next poet we have is Arthur Hugh Clough, born 1819, died 1861. The famous work The French Lieutenant's Woman, written by John Fowles, has an epigraph taken from the poems by Arthur Hugh Clough. He has written The Bothie of Toberna Bullock, Say Not the Struggle, and Amers the Voyage, published 1858. Only titles are enough of these works. And next poet we have is James Thomson, born 1834, died 1882. He is called English Edgar Allan Poe, an American writer and the first to write a detective short story. His works are Sunday of the River. The opening line is, "My love over the water bends dreaming, it glideth and glideth away." Next he has written In the Train. The opening lines are, As we rush in the train, the trees and the houses go heeling back. And the third one he has written is Gifts. Here the last lines of the poem are, Give a man a girl he can love, as I, O my love, love thee. And his heart is great with the pulse of fate, at home on land on the sea. And finally he has written The City of Dreadful Night, published 1874. Now there was a famous group of poets in Victorian Age which was called spasmodic poets. It is a term applied by Ayton to a group of poets which included P.G. Bailey, J. Marston, S. Dobell and Alexander Smith. Spasmodic poems tended to describe intense interior psychological drama, were violent and verbose, and were characterized by obscuring pathetic fallacy and extravagant imagery. Their heroes, who owed much to Byron and Goethe, were lonely, aspiring, disillusioned, and frequently poets themselves. They are W. E. Ayton. He has written Vermilion, a spasmodic tragedy. He is the first to start this group. Second, we have Alexander Smith, who wrote sonnets on the Crimean War and city poems. And third, we have Sidney Dobell, who also wrote sonnets on the Crimean War, and he has also published the Romans. And fourth one is P.J. Bailey. He has written The Angel Word and Universal Hymn. Finally, we have Westland Marston. He has written The Patrician's Daughter, a tragedy in 5 acts. After Spasmodic, we have the Pre-Raphaelite group. This group was started by D.G. Rossetti, his brother William Rossetti, his sister Christiana Rossetti, A.C. Swinburne, William Morris, Thomas Fuller, and James Collinson. These poets are known as painters. They are also known as the romantic writers of the Victorians. They are Dante Gabriel Society, born 1828, died 1882. He was inspired by John Keats. He hated his middle name. G.M. Hopkins also hated his middle name. His works are The White Ship, The Blessed Damozel, 1854, Sister Helen, Troy Town, and House of Life, a sonnet sequence. Next writer we have is W. M. Rossetti. After that we have Christiana Rossetti. She would write using the pseudonym Ellen Aline. She has written Goblin Market. You need to read this work and the summary of this work also. It is the story of two sisters, Lizzie and Laura, who represent sense and sensibility. This poem has been studied from a lesbian or LGBTQ plus perspective. Next writer we have is J.E. Milias. He was a member of the Royal Society for being politically active. His works include Lorenzo and Isabella, Christ in the House of His Parents, and Autumn Leaves. Autumn Leaves, published 2002, was also written by Ramnath Kak and deals with the condition of Kashmir. Next we have William Holman Hunt. He wrote the autobiographies of the Pre-Raphaelites Brotherhood. Next writer we have is A.C. Swinburne, born 1837, died 1909. He was the most successful writer of this group. He has written Atlanta in Caledon, 1864. Here we have an opening line, when the hounds of spring are on winter's traces. Finally, we have William Morris, born 1834, died 1896. He is an active group member. He was a member of the Anti-Scrap Society. He was tasked with preserving old monuments, buildings, and architecture. He has also started two magazines, Oxford and Cambridge, in 1856. His work, Earthly Paradise, is based on Chaucer's Canterbury Tales because they also have 24 tales. The word Earthly Paradise deals with Dante's Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Purgatorio has a last stage known as Earthly Paradise. Apart from that, he has also written News from Nowhere, published 1890. It is a utopian novel. Now we will discuss Victorian novelists. The 19th century novelists or the Victorian novelists are primarily known for portraying a realistic approach towards life. Whenever somebody portrays the realistic details of life, that is called realism. When somebody portrays life as it is without intensifying some bad or dark side of life, that is called naturalism. Now we will discuss the Victorian novelist in detail. First of all, we have Charles Dickens, born 1812, died 1870. Charles Dickens' father was imprisoned in Marshalsea prison. This was known as debtor prisons. One more prison, Newgate prison, was known for the criminals. At 27, Dickens became a freelance writer and a self-established man. Charles Dickens' personal life is mentioned in the novel David Copperfield. You need to read the novel itself. It is very important. It is a highly autobiographical novel. It is usually said about this novel by Hugh Walker. The pen that wrote David Copperfield was often dipped in his own blood. This book was published in 1850. Dickens said, like my many parents, I have in my heart of hearts a favorite child, and his name is David Copperfield. The famous villain of the novel Uriah Heep is known as one of the best villains developed by Charles Dickens. Now we will discuss Dickens' works. First of all, he has written Sketches by Boz, published 1836-37. It was the pseudonym of Charles Dickens' cousin Boz, but he used it. Second, he has written Pickwick Papers. You can read the novel itself. It is very important. It was written in collaboration with Robert Seymour, who committed suicide, and this was the reason that his widow filed a case against Dickens because he was not providing her proper dues. There is an important character, Sam Weller. Third, he has written Nicholas Nickleby, published 1838. You can read the novel or the detailed summary of this novel also. It is very important. He targeted the Victorian schooling system in this work. Here we have a character, Mr. Beckford Squares, who has been given punishment for transportation. Fourth one we have is Old Curiosity Show of 1840. You can read this work. It is very important. Here we have a famous character, Fred Trent. The death scene in this story is known as the most emotional scene in the history of English literature. Fifth one, he has written Martin Chuzzlewit, published 1844. Only title is enough. Sixth one, he has written A Christmas Carol, 1843. You need to read this work. It is very important. Here we have a character, Ebenezer Scrooge. There are 4 ghosts in this novel. That is, in this short story or a short novella. That is the 4 ghosts, past, present, future, and Jacob Marley. Seventh one, he has written Bleak House. We have an important character, Lady Dedlock. It is narrated in the first and third person. The novel is a farce in the British legal system, the government system, and office of circumlocution. Next one, he has written Hard Times, published 1854. You need to read this novel, full novel. It is very important. The opening lines are, what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts. Facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else and root out everything. It is divided into 3 parts, sowing, reaping, and gardening. It has a character, Mr. Gradgrind, inspired by G.S. Mill's philosophy of utilitarianism, 1861. Next, he has written Little Dorrit, published 1857. You can read the summary of this work, detailed summary. The story of a boy, Emmy Dorrit, born in Marshalsea prison. It also satirizes the government system and class conflict. Next, he has written A Tale of Two Cities. You need to read the full novel. It is very important, so you need to read the full novel. There are 2 cities mentioned, London and Paris. The book is inspired by Thomas Carlyle's Past and Present and the French Revolution. This book has a great opening line. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Next is Great Expectations, you need to read the full novel. It is very important, very, very important, I would say. And very good novel it is. And finally, he has written Oliver Twist. Again, you need to read the detailed summary of this work. Here we have one of the notorious villains, Fajin. It deals with crime among children. The next writer we have is Thomas Hardy, the next novelist actually. He was given the Order of Merit Award and was equally criticized at that time for making adulterous women heroines of his stories. He believes pain and suffering are part of life and happiness is simply the occasional episode. He proves that man is nothing in the hands of God. He believes that man is a helpless creature, a mere puppet at the hands of destiny or fate. Now we will discuss Thomas Hardy's work. The first one is The Poor Man and the Lady. It never got published because his friend George Meredith told him not to publish this work. Next, he has written Desperate Remedies. Read the summary of this work. Next, he has written Under the Greenwood Tree, published 1872. Read the summary of this work also. The title has been taken from Shakespeare's drama As You Like It. It is the name of his song in the play. Fourth one he has written is A Pair of Blue Eyes, published 1873. Read the summary of this work. Fifth one is Far from the Madding Crowd, published 1874. Again, read the summary of this work also. The important character in this particular novel is Bathsheba Everdeen. So you can read this character sketch also. Next one is Jude the Obscure, published 1895. You need to read the novel actually. At least the detailed summary of this novel because it is very important. This is a story of complex relationships, religious references, allegories, and the realistic details of a poor person. Next, he has written Tess of the D'Urbervilles. You need to read the novel. It has the subtitle A Pure Woman. This is a satire on fake morality. Virginity is related to image, piousness, and purity. Hardy called the woman a pure woman because she was the purest person. It's not the virginity that makes you the purest person. Finally, he has written The Mayor of Casterbridge, published 1886. You need to read the novel. This novel has a famous quote: happiness was but the occasional episode in a journal drama of pain. Next, we will discuss William Makepeace Thackeray, born 1811, died 1863. He was born in Calcutta. Thackeray was sent to the famous Charterhouse School. He referred to it as Slaughterhouse, where he gave us glimpses in his The Newcomes. He is first of all a realist who paints life as he sees it. As he says himself, I have no brain above my eyes, I describe what I see. He worked for magazines such as Morning Chronicles, The Times, and the Constitutional National Standard. His minor works are The Yellow Plush Papers, published 1838, The Paris Sketchbook, published 1841, The Great Hogarty Diamond, 1841, The Book of Snobs, 1848, Pandinus, 1849 to 1850, The Newcomes, 1855, The Virginias, 1859. He has also written Vanity Fair, published 1847, 1848. You need to read the full novel. It is very important. Thackeray styles his work A Novel Without a Hero. The title has been taken from John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. The last line of this novel is A Vanitas Vanitatum, which means which of us is happy in this world, which of us has his desire or having it is satisfied. Come children, let us shut up the box and the puppets, for our play is played out. Finally, he has written The History of Henry Esmond, published 1852. George Eliot called it the most uncomfortable book you can imagine. The hero is in love with the daughter all through the book and marries the mother at the end. Next novelist we have is George Eliot, born 1819, died 1880. George Eliot was not a man but a woman. Her real name was Mary Ann Evans. When questioned about this, why did she use the pseudonym of a male, she said, I want to be taken seriously. She is the first writer to deal with the stream of consciousness technique or interior monologue. William James coined this term in The Principles of Psychology. She has written The Mill on the Floss, very, very important work. You need to read the novel itself. Floss is a river. Maggie and Tom Oliver are modeled after her and her brother. Next, she has written Adam Bidday. Need to read the detailed summary of this novel. It was published in 1859. Dina Morris and Mrs. Poyser are modeled after her aunt and mother respectively. Next, she has written Middlemarch. Again, the detailed summary, published 1871-72. Virginia Woolf called it a novel for adults. It is the story of a girl, Dorothea Brooke, who falls in love with a professor. Edward Casaubon, who is twice her age, an old man who is working on a great book known as Key of All Mythologies, which paved the way for J.G. Fraser's The Golden Bough. सेलेब गार्थ इज़ मॉडल्ड आफ्टर हर फादर। तो इस नावल में क्या होता है, डोरिया ब्रूक जो प्रोफेसर से शादी तो कर लेते हैं, लेकिन प्रोफेसर उसके प्रति ज़्यादा ध्यान नहीं देता है। लेटर उसका अफेयर हो जाता है उसके यंगर ब्रदर के साथ, ठीक है। तो ऐसी कुछ कहानी है ये। तो दैट इज़ वाई वर्जीनिया वुल्फ कॉल्ड इट अ नॉवल फॉर अडल्ट्स। Next, she has written Daniel Deronda, published 1876. It has Jewish characters. The story is told from a flashback point of view. The central character is Gwendolyn Harleth. She regarded it as her greatest book. Next, she has written Silas Mariner, only title is enough. And then she has written Romola, 1862-1863. Felix Holt, the Radical, 1866. The Spanish Gypsy, 1868. Only titles are enough of these works. And then we have Bronte sisters. Three sisters are known as Stormy Sisterhood. They are Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte and Anne Bronte. Emily Bronte has written Wuthering Heights, published 1847. Again, you need to read the novel itself. Charlotte Bronte fell in love with her own professor and talked about the story in her famous work Professor, published 1853. She has also written Jane Eyre, published 1847. Again, you need to read the novel. Very important novel. In this novel, there is a direct address to the reader when she says, "Reader, I married him." Jane Eyre has been studied from a feminist point of view, and a feminist work that deals with Victorian feminism, Mad Woman in the Attic, written by Susan Gubar and Sandra Gilbert, actually talks about Bertha Mason. Jane Rees has written White Sargasso Sea, 1966. It is a prequel to Jane Eyre that focuses on Bertha's story and features Bertha, here renamed Antoniette Cosway, as one of its narrators. Anne Bronte has written Agnes Grey, published 1847, and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, 1848. You can read the summary if you wish to, although not necessary. It deals with marital rape and domestic abuse. All these three sisters have pseudonyms. Anne Bronte is Actonwell, born 1820, died 1849. Emily Bronte as Alice Bell, born 1818, died 1848. Charlotte Bronte is Currerwell, born 1816, died 1855. We have some minor novelists of this age also. First one we have is Charles Reade, born 1814, died 1884. Next we have Anthony Trollope, 1815, 1882. Next we have Bulwer Lytton, 1803, 1873. Charles Kingsley, 1819, 1875. He has written Westward Ho, published 1855. Next we have is Mrs. Elizabeth Gaskell, born 1810, died 1865. She has written Cranford, published 1853, and Life of Charlotte Bronte. And then we have Richard Doddridge Blackmore, born 1825, died 1900. He has written Lorna Doone, published 1869. Next we have George Meredith, born 1828, died 1909. He has written The Adventures of Henry Richmond, published 1871. Next we have Robert Louis Stevenson, born 1850, died 1894. He has written Treasure Island, 1883. You can read the summary if you wish to. And then he has written Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, published 1886. Finally we have the Victorian essayist. First one we have is Thomas Babington Macaulay, born 1800, died 1859. He has written Essay on Milton, published 1825. Lays of Ancient Rome, published 1842. Essays, collection of essays, published 1843. And then History of England, 1848 to 1855. And next essayist we have is Thomas Carlyle, born 1795, died 1881. He has written essays on Burns, Hero and Hero Worship, French Revolution, 1837. Oliver Cromwell's Letters and Speeches, Sartus Resartus, it means the tailor patched up, published 1834. Next writer we have is John Ruskin, born 1819, died 1900. He has written Sesame and Lilies, King's Treasuries, Of Kewn's Gardens, and Unto This Last. Unto This Last is very important. Next we have is Matthew Arnold, born 1822, died 1888. He has written on translating Homer, 1861. Culture and Anarchy, very important, 1869. The Study of Poetry, Literature and Dogma, published 1873. Essays in Criticism. Next we have is John Henry Newman, born 1801, died 1819. He has written Apologia Pro Vita Sua, published 1864. Finally we have is Darwin's Origin of Species, published 1859. You can read this work, it is very important. So finally our Victorian age comes to an end over here. I hope you like the video, and if you like the video, please like, share and comment on the video, and please subscribe the channel for further such updates. Thank you very much for watching the video. Have a great day.